everyone out there. This is Mattman, my daughter Mila. She wanted to say hi.
Hi.
Today we're going to quickly discuss a few updates with my chemotherapy session round 5, as well as my PET-CT results, kind of update from there, as well as my diet focus point of grains today. But before that, I wanted to say a big thank you to everyone who donated for the GoFundMe. We hit our goal, and I'm so looking forward to writing a nice big check for the lymphoma research. I'm going to continue to keep the GoFundMe open until I'm done with all my treatments, and then after that, we'll go ahead and make that big donation. But a big thank you to everyone out there, and Milo wanted to say thank you as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, seriously, it means a lot to us, so thanks. The first thing we're going to discuss today is my chemotherapy session round 5. Each session has definitely gotten harder and harder, especially with seeing my last scan of my tumors essentially being gone in my chest. I think the chemotherapy at this point is just attacking my body, so it was a noticeable difference in my fatigue this past week and just feeling crappy. The general burning in my chest, started to get some GI issues in my abdomen and just kind of cramping and stuff there, as well as the neuropathy, and the hair loss continues obviously with that as well. The two updates with that, I talked to my oncologist and she said we're going to do, as expected, another 2 months of chemotherapy to ensure everything is gone. She did say she's willing to decrease 2 of the drugs in my treatment to hopefully not do any permanent damage to my body. She was worried specifically about the neuropathy, that numbness and tingling in my fingers and toes. So we're hoping to make that go away. That would be great. The other thing that we found in my last PET-CT scan, they found that I also have diverticulosis, which is when there's extra sacs inside of your large intestine or colon. It's typically not a problem unless it gets infected, in which case it would become diverticulitis. There's no really cure for it. Basically just eat a higher fiber diet. They think that one of the causes might be a low fiber diet. The other potential cause is a low immune system or a reduced immune system, which obviously I have with everything going on with the chemotherapy. During my 5th chemotherapy treatment also, just another sign that my liver's working overtime, I also started to get cherry angiomas all over my body. I tried to show you a picture of them, but basically it looks like someone took a little red pen and put dots around my chest and my back and my arm. They're technically skin tumors, but I think it's just kind of a conglomeration of blood cells that have kind of bursted on the top level of the skin. They do occur naturally as you get older, but these definitely occurred during my chemotherapy treatment, which was quite strange. I took my shirt off in order to get my access to my port when I started chemotherapy, and everything looked normal. 4 hours later, when I took my shirt off again to get everything removed, I looked down and there's these little red dots all over my chest, and we found they were on my back and my arms as well. So what we're going to do is I'm going to wait 3 months after my chemotherapy is complete to see if they go away naturally. Reading online doesn't sound like they do. If they don't, then in which case I'm going to have to get them all individually burned out. We probably have, 30 or 40 of these little dots around my chest and back. So yeah, that should be fun. Anyway, so that's chemotherapy session round 5, and the PET-CT update kind of combined in one there. Also, the doctor wanted to recommend me to radiology still at the end for potential radiation therapy after chemotherapy is done. Hopefully there's nothing left to radiate. Last I heard from the last scan is that my tumors are gone completely, so there's no masses to even radiate. But just to do her due diligence, she wanted to ensure that I get referred there to see what they say. So we'll see what happens in another 2 months as far as radiation therapy or not in that regard. All right, today we're going to discuss grains. But before we do, I'm going to let Mila say goodbye to everyone because I think she's getting antsy to go eat some dinner. So Mila, you want to say goodbye?
Bye.
See ya. So for the diet focus point today of discussing grains, really I just want to discuss the difference between refined or processed grains, whole grains, and then sprouted grains I'll discuss quickly at the end. Basically, to discuss this, though, we need to understand what a grain is and what a whole grain looks like. So I'll show an image here of what a whole grain looks like. There's 3 basic parts. There's the bran, the germ, and the endosperm. The bran is that outer edge that contains a lot of the fiber, a lot of the antioxidants, as well as some B vitamins and some other minerals. The next you see is the germ. The germ is essentially the embryo for the whole grain itself. So that's what becomes and sprouts into a new plant whenever these things are planted. The germ is very nutritionally dense, has a lot of omega-3 fatty acids, has other minerals and vitamins. It's really where most of the nutrients come from. The next you can see is the endosperm. The endosperm is essentially the fuel or the energy for the germ whenever it is planted. It's basically starchy carbs and has some proteins and a few trace minerals as well. So what happens is whenever you refine these grains, the bran and the germ is removed completely and all you're left with is the endosperm, which is essentially starchy carbs. So you lose 25% of your protein, you lose I think 17 of the nutrients are greatly reduced out of that whole grain. as well as a bunch of the fiber and a bunch of the omega-3 fatty acids as well. So a lot of good stuff is lost whenever you process these grains, and just all you're left with is that endosperm. I'll show you a graph here of what the difference in wheat is when it's refined versus when it's not refined. You'll also see on the graph there that they talk about when they're enriched. So America found out in the 1930s, once vitamins were essentially found at that point, that this refined wheat, when you're left only the endosperm, really didn't have any B vitamins in it and didn't have any folic acid and was really low in iron. So what they have now is anytime you're buying anything, it's by law you need to enrich it with these B vitamins as well as the iron and folic acid. So you'll see that quite a bit in enriched flours with these additives there. Nonetheless, these additives don't make up for what they were before, and they're not the natural form they're added otherwise. So the healthiest and most nutrition dense version of this is going to be eating whole grains versus just that endosperm of that whole grain. How did this come about? Really prior to around 1870 or so, all flours and processed, if you will, grains were not really processed grains. They were just whole grains that were ground down. Some of the mills were able to remove the bran, but they were never really able to remove the germ from the endosperm. So they still had a bunch of nutrients that were in the flours that were produced up until then. Industrial Revolution happened. A lot of the steel and ceramic and iron were used in order to make these mills. What was produced around this time was what's called a roller mill. And this roller mill was able to remove the germ and the bran completely from the endosperm, and all you were left with was the endosperm. It produced a very nice light white flour that everyone's used to seeing today. But we didn't know back then that you were taking so many of the nutrients out. We thought we were just making a beautiful flour that made really nice, light, fluffy desserts for us. The other thing that the manufacturers really liked about this was the fact that this nice white flour would stay on the shelves forever, basically, compared to what it was before, where when they ground the flour and it had left the germ inside, it only lasted 2 to 3 weeks on the shelf prior to it going rancid. They think that's due to the omega-3 fatty acids getting oxidized and essentially, quote unquote, ruining the flour when it lasts more than 3 weeks on the shelf there. So that's a quick history of refined flours and how they kind of came about up until around the 1930s is when vitamins were found, at which point they started to incorporate into law, in the US at least, that you had to enrich your flour at that point. But still, we're left with a very starchy, carb-dense flour that doesn't really have much nutrients compared to what it should have with its whole grain version. So some key takeaways that I've looked for when I'm trying to incorporate more whole grains into my diet and why. So realize when it says whole grain on the label, whole grain doesn't mean necessarily 100% whole grain. So you want to see at least 100% whole grain on the label, but really what I'm going to do every time I'm buying food now, it's kind of annoying, but it's good as far as overall health, is I'm going to check the ingredient list. The ingredient list, you should see, whole grain as the number one ingredient, and then check what the ingredients are afterwards. If there's enriched flour in there, that is, that processed flour. Realize that multi-grain does not equal whole grain. This is a misconception that I had for sure. It's a multi-grain bun, it's healthy for me, I get so many more nutrients out of it. Not really true. You're really just getting a bunch more carbs from other grains out there. So multi-grain does not equal whole grain. So again, check the label on the back of whatever you're buying and see if it says whole grains in it. Why do we even care about these refined grains? Really, if you're losing a little bit of nutrition, you could probably get them in other foods. But the problem is the way these refined grains react with our body itself. So when you consume these refined or processed grains, your body almost instantly converts them into glucose or blood sugar in your blood. And your body needs to react by creating a bunch of insulin. So it creates a spike of insulin, your body needs to react quickly, and then it goes away. And so you're essentially training your body to potentially being insulin resistant, which could potentially lead to diabetes, which could lead to potentially heart disease and obesity, and leads to a lot of the problems that we see in America today because of this trend of just spiking your sugar inside your blood with these refined grains. It's really just not good for your body at all. So with the whole grain itself, it does help a little bit with the fiber and some of the other nutrients to slow down that process of being converted into your blood there. The other problem with refined grains is typically you'll see they're paired up with these oils that we talked about last week that are super high in omega-6s. So when you consume some sort of a processed food with these highly refined flours as their main ingredient and no whole grains at all, you'll also be consuming a lot of these high omega-6 with very low omega-3s because the omega-3 has been removed from the grain itself. There's really no other omega-3 or minimal omega-3 in your canola oil or your soybean oil or your sunflower oil. And then you're introducing a lot of the more free radicals in your body, which cause damage inflammation, which causes a lot of other problems as far as heart disease, and then these spikes in your blood sugar. Your body's just reacting not the way it should, versus eating whole grains and eating healthier fats that reduce these inflammation and are overall just better for your body in the long run. Sadly, the American diet is full of these processed flours and grains, and so you really need to be very conscious of what you're eating, both in what you're buying in the grocery store, what you might consider healthy. You might double check and just double check that ingredient list, because it may not be as healthy as what you thought it was. And then, especially when you're eating at fast food and out at different restaurants, typically they're going to be covering these things with refined grains and oils themselves. I'm not saying I'm going to be eating a 100% whole grain diet for the rest of my life. It's just going to be a conscious effort from now on to try to do that. And yeah, I'll have the occasional pizza that's made with white flour, but I will. We've tried, almond flour pizza crust, which has been pretty delicious, or even just whole wheat pizza crust, which has been pretty good as well. So there's other ways to do this. Just typically you need to make it yourself at home to try to ensure that you have a solidly healthy diet there. While whole grains will definitely be better for you than refined grains, they have found that some of these whole grains have what's called anti-nutrients in them, which is a thing called phytic acid or some lectins inside of them. And what this is essentially, it's the seed's way of having you eat the seed without having you absorb any of the nutrients, so that seed can pass through your body, and whenever you release your waste out of your body, that seed can continue to grow into whatever plant it was. But what we've found is that if you sprout these seeds or soak them as they're essentially sprouting, this phytic acid and these anti-nutrients are greatly reduced or removed completely. And so once you consume a sprouted seed, you still get all the nutrients and all the benefits, and you get to remove these anti-nutrients, so you're able to absorb a lot of these nutrients. I found a good study out of Harvard Medical School, which essentially proved just that yes, you are getting more nutrients when you eat sprouted grain foods. What they did emphasize, though, is that the cost versus benefit. So right now, sprouted grains are pretty expensive, and they do go bad much quicker, just due to their nature. So they essentially recommended that if you try to eat one serving of sprouted grain a day, so you can absorb a lot more of those nutrients. But if you're trying to incorporate 100% sprouted grains in your diet, it's just not going to be worth it as far as the cost benefit of what you're getting there. Cool, so those are some of the big takeaways for today. I hope you found something useful in this video. Again, just please continue to read the ingredients in the back of your labels, trying to avoid those vegetable oils, and now trying to add whole grains in your diet, and really, if you can, removing these processed and refined flours. If not, just please try to reduce them, so you're not going to be destroying your body like a lot of the American diet does. So, all right, talk to you guys later. Again, I love you. Appreciate all the support. It's been, I couldn't have done it without the support from everyone, my family and friends out there. So I'll talk to you guys later. Keep you updated. See ya.